name is Peter Cartier. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful sunny day after a USA victory in the World Cup. And while I could talk about that all day, instead we're going to discuss the hybrid cloud, making Office 365 and the private cloud work for you. It's another short to the point webinar in our Fpwebinar series, which is all subject matter dictated by you. So make sure you let us know what you want to hear about when you fill out the survey at the end of this, and we'll do our best to put together a webinar around it. If you pop onto our website, you're going to find at least 8 other webinars to walk you through common SharePoint and cloud concerns. So be sure to check that out or share with friends. At the end of this webinar, we will be announcing a winner for our Microsoft Windows 8 Pro prize, and that's valued at $199. So all you have to do is be present during the entire webinar, and that'll be randomly chosen at the end. And as another reminder, as I'm finishing up the house cleaning part, it's any questions can be put on Twitter with hashtag #FPWebinar, or you can use the GoToWebinar chat option that you see on your screen, and we're going to handle all those at the end. So joining us once again and beating his own personal record for most webinars attended as a speaker on a Tuesday is Mr. Chris Schwab. Hi, Chris.
Thanks, Peter. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in today. I'm going to jump right in. Like Peter said, we try to keep these pretty short, and to do that, we've got to be pretty targeted with what we're talking about, and we also need to sort of set the context pretty clear. So another thing Peter mentioned is a lot of the content is driven from you, and one of the things that people were asking us for was to kind of set the stage of what a hybrid between Office 365 and Fpweb or private cloud kind of looks like. So the context for this webinar is exactly that, and I'm also assuming that you're already somewhat interested in that kind of scenario. So I'm not going to go in, I'm not going to compare what we do to Office 365. There's already another good webinar out there. We've got an ebook. We'll include that as we kind of send out the details of this. I'm not going to get into that because it takes too much time to lay that all out. What I am going to do, though, is kind of start off by defining some terms, this public and private and hybrid cloud. It all gets a little blurry. So I want to kind of jump in really quick and kind of give you the context for those terms, and then we'll talk more about the hybrid and the Office 365 piece of this. The other thing that I'm not going to do is this isn't a sales pitch for us, so I'm going to kind of try to keep this pretty standard as far as, when I'm talking about private cloud and public cloud, and try to keep kind of the sales stuff out of that. So before I get too far along, though, let me introduce myself. I am Chris Schwab. I'm the president here at Fpweb. I started out here as a technical person and have done a lot of marketing and sales and conferences, and so I've talked to a lot of different people about this scenario that we're talking about today. So I'm going to try to use that background to hopefully get us close to some questions that are probably rattling around in your head. My goal here is to go through and to use that to set the stage and hopefully get you closer, get you started asking some questions, and then we can kind of take those at the end, or we can take them offline. But before we go to kind of continue setting that stage, we do have a poll for you here. So what I'm interested to know is, where is your SharePoint located right now? And what we're kind of looking for there is, are we on-prem? Are we looking at Office 365 or private cloud or hybrid or not deployed yet? I'm just trying to, again, kind of get some context as far as what you have right now, so that we can kind of talk a little bit more appropriately about it. So we're going to let that one spin here for just a minute. And then I'm going to kind of move on here just a little bit too and start talking about the public cloud. So this is another one of those sort of ambiguous terms, and generally I'll give you sort of how I look at it. It may not be the book definition per se, but generally when we start talking about the public cloud, I'm talking specifically about kind of a software as a service, which is almost as equally as ambiguous of a term. But what I'm looking for is, I'm looking for an application that I essentially hand somebody some money for, and what I basically get is a login in return. So it's very simplified. Office 365 is one of these. There's other ones out there. Salesforce is one of those. Google Apps, those things. These are all software as a service or public cloud applications. Office 365 is actually, though, a suite of products. So there's not there's a lot of stuff sort of bundled into one main product. So there's really 4 kind of main products that we start talking about: is Exchange and Lync and Office web apps, and then SharePoint Online. When I start talking about SharePoint Online, I'll try to keep my terms kind of separate here. So Office 365 and SharePoint Online sometimes get used kind of interchangeably, and what I'm going to try to do is, if I say Office 365, I'm talking about the suite of products. If I'm talking about SharePoint Online, I'm talking specifically about that one inside of the group. Again, I'm not really comparing and contrasting this. There's another webinar that kind of goes in. Malcolm Eaton from PSC Group did one. I think it was the last one that we did.
Correct.
And he goes through and kind of really lines out what the limitations of Office 365 is, and what you can and can't, or what even becomes just more difficult inside of that. So we're not going to dive too deep into that. But what I will say is, in a public cloud, especially with SharePoint, what you're looking at is you're looking at kind of this multi-tenant scenario. So you're on a server with a bunch of other customers, and you kind of get this little piece of the pie carved out for you. And the big benefit is that there's not really any management overhead that goes on with that, or very little. The drawback generally is it limits your ability to customize that solution. Now, they've done a pretty good job with building in some ability to customize that and give you some flexibility, but you're still limited with kind of what they're giving you. So that's kind of my quick little bring us up to speed on public cloud, and especially as it applies to Office 365. Private cloud is the next one, and we're also looking at kind of some of the results here. So it's pretty much what you would expect to see on our poll. Most of you are still on-prem with pretty much an even smattering of everything else between not deployed and Office 365. So that's pretty normal. There's a few of you already in a private cloud. So what I'm going to talk about next probably isn't anything new for you. But just to kind of give you the overview, generally when we're looking at a private cloud, we're talking about taking servers kind of out of your data center and putting them up in someone else's cloud. So we're operating this on a server level, not necessarily on an application level. Although private cloud with Fpweb, what we do is we spin those servers up, and then we actually lay SharePoint on top of that. So we're a SharePoint-specific kind of private cloud. The benefit here is that that's full-featured SharePoint, so that it's an entire installation, just like what you would do on-prem. So we're not limiting what's going on like what's in an Office 365, but we're giving you full-featured SharePoint. But because we're also operating somewhere in the middle of that kind of management spectrum between, you know, the on-prem of having to go out and buy your own servers and install your own software and manage everything yourself, and then the other end of the spectrum is the public cloud, where you just hand it all off to someone else. We're kind of right in the middle. We also are doing some management layers on top of SharePoint to try to fit into whatever your scenario is, to say, here's how much management I'm willing to take on versus how much do I really need to get off my plate. So it's a full-featured SharePoint implementation that still has some kind of management layers on top of that. So that's kind of the quick overview of private cloud. Again, a lot of you, if you're tuning in here, you probably already had an idea of what that stuff was. I just want to make sure that we had those terms kind of out there, because now when we start talking about hybrid cloud, what really is a hybrid cloud? So hybrid cloud is kind of mixing this whole thing up and using bits and pieces of all kinds of different clouds to sort of bolt together one big solution. And SharePoint itself is pretty suited for a private cloud, because it has the ability to sort of reach out and do a lot of stuff with data in a lot of different locations. It's also suited for it because, especially when we talk about Office 365, it's not really like those other applications, okay? It's not Exchange and it's not Lync, that pretty much are what they are when you turn them on, right? So you spin them up, you connect the client into them, and you start getting mail, or you start communicating. And that's, for the most part, it. There's a little more you can do with Exchange, but for the most part, they're an application, all right? They are what they are when you turn them on. SharePoint is more of a platform. And the best way that I know to really describe that and to kind of lay that out as far as what the difference is, it's just like you going out and buying a tablet or a new laptop, and you get it home and you turn it on and you start using it, and there's limited value right now, right? And there's some applications that were probably installed. There's some stuff that was already set up at the store or by the manufacturer that give you some value. But it's really not until you start building and putting things on top of it, whether you're playing games or whether you're managing your finances, and when you start building these things on top of it, that's the true value of a platform. And SharePoint really is a platform. It's not necessarily an application in my mind. So if you install SharePoint and it's just out of the box, it's just installed, there is some value there. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, but the true value doesn't really come on until you start building things on top of it, and you start building these business applications, and you start solving problems for your organization within the product. So what that means is that we inherently need a lot of flexibility with how we customize the product. And what we said kind of with that public cloud piece was that it limits our functionality. So SharePoint is really limited is really suited for a private cloud because we want to remove those limitations so that we can build it into what we want. Now, what we really want to do, though, is really want to have kind of the best of both worlds here. So the applications that are suited, and this is why we're talking about hybrid, the applications that are suited for a public cloud like Exchange and Lync, we want to live there because we don't want to pull them into a private cloud because now we're adding some management layers and we don't really get any benefit out of that. But what we do want to do is we want to pull a product like SharePoint out of that stack because there is value in having it in a more controllable and customizable situation. So the biggest problem that we run into, though, when we start breaking all this stuff apart and kind of the scary part of hybrid is how do you integrate it, right? How does the whole thing kind of talk? Because we all manage users, and we know that if we give them 6 different places to go and log in, they're going to have a sticky note on their desk that has their logins and their passwords for all 6 of these. And all of a sudden we start losing kind of this security, and the users are frustrated because one password has to change, and so every week, maybe they're updating a password, and they start to get really confused as far as kind of what's where and how do they get to here. And so what happens a lot of times is they'll start figuring out ways around having to use the product, or they'll kind of stop adopting and stop moving forward with something because it's kind of too annoying of a process. So integration is a big key in all of this. And the nice part is that Office 365 supports Active Directory federated services. So ADFS is a way that we can link Active Directories between different locations. Now, in a private cloud, again, you've got a little more customization ability. So what we can actually do are operate trusts back to your network. And that's kind of nice for SharePoint because there's some things that an Active Directory federated services doesn't really do nicely. Now, there's some workarounds and there's some ways in Office 365 you can still get full functionality. So what we can do is we can bolt this whole thing together with your private cloud trusted back to your department with Active Directory federated services, and make that single sign-on work across all of those so that when your users come in and they log into one system, it's going to permeate out to all the other ones. When they get a notification out to change their password, it's going to permeate through all the different systems. They don't have to go out and do kind of this widespread password change and really, again, annoy them and risk sort of losing the momentum on our adoption or our usability of a lot of these platforms. What does it look like when it's all done? What it's supposed to look like with your customers and your employees is it should look like it's all just one big application. And they shouldn't know where they're having to go. They shouldn't know that Exchange is over in Office 365 and SharePoint is over here in private cloud, and that another version of their SharePoint might even be on-prem. All they know is that they log in, they click links, and they go there, and they don't get annoyed by password prompts or login prompts. One system isn't significantly slower than another one. It all just works, and it all is kind of bound together, and it all looks clean like one big solution. And there's a lot of different ways to kind of slice that up in this hybrid scenario. And again, to reference some more information, because we're trying to keep this pretty short, there is a whole hybrid webinar out there in our webinar list, and that'll get sent out as well, that talks more about different scenarios as far as where you would use hybrid, not just integrating kind of Office 365 into the mix. So once we've got it all bundled together and once it all looks clean, the next thing I want to talk about are sort of the use cases for this, because now what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to kind of paint some pictures and try to get you some ideas of where this really makes sense and where it really adds a lot of value into your system, and hopefully some of that will kind of ring true with what you're doing. And I know it's, again, we've got a lot of people on-prem, so if you're attending this, I'm assuming at some point you're looking at going to a scenario like this. So where does it make sense to do this, and where does it really add a lot of value? And the first one is that when we're talking about intranets, if we've got something that's heavily customized, we're using a lot of third-party applications, things like that. That's one of the reasons, one of the scenarios that it makes a lot of sense to sort of pull this out and put it in a private cloud scenario and set up this hybrid. That's where we've seen a lot of clients sort of come to us and say, we love what Office 365 brings, but we want to keep our SharePoint kind of separate from that. A bigger one, though, to me, and the one that we get hit with a lot, are extranets, because you're bringing in external users now, and those users aren't as familiar with your business as your employees are. So a lot of times you can get away with, on your intranet, kind of having a more basic layout and functionality because your users are already familiar with internal processes and procedures and the way the company kind of operates. But when you start bringing in external users, you really need to do a lot of customization to make the usability of that platform pretty smooth. And whether we're talking about doing forms logins and changing login prompts, or we're just looking at look and feel and customizations, or we're looking at third-party products to do certain things, the extranets make a lot of sense because of the extensiveness of what we need to customize. So what we'll see a lot of times is we'll see somebody that may go public cloud for their own internal Office 365, Exchange, and SharePoint, and Lync, and then they'll spin their extranet out to a private cloud. We'll still set up all the single sign-on so the internal users can still reach the extranet without having to get prompts or anything like that and manage their documents. But we're not, we're kind of taking, again, the best of both worlds in there with the extranet piece. And then finally, the last kind of scenario, the use case of this is for intranet sites. This is where it makes a lot of sense now. A lot of people have started using SharePoint for their internet sites because it manages their documents, and they can really kind of do a full content management around their website. But the other hand of it is that you really don't want that website to look anything like SharePoint. So you really need to go in and do some heavy lifting to make this thing look like a real professional website while you still maintain all those content management features around SharePoint. So we're not seeing this scenario as common as like the extranets or even the highly customized intranet sites. But when we do see it, it makes a lot of sense to spin that out to a private cloud as well, because now we've got something that our hands are not tied. We can make it look and feel and do whatever we need it to do internally, but we still are maintaining kind of that single sign-on, and it's still linked with all of our other stuff, so that when the content management comes in, the authentication pieces are all still in place. So we do see, and we're actually seeing more of these intranet sites that are coming in and using this scenario. So again, maybe you're keeping your internet on-prem because it's not that big of a deal for you to manage, or maybe you're moving it out to Office 365. Maybe it's got a lot of customizations and you're putting it out with us, or maybe you're keeping it in those two locations and you're just spinning out an extranet or an internet site out to a private cloud. Any of those scenarios is a kind of a good use case for using private cloud hosting, especially SharePoint hosting. So with all that being said, I know I've thrown probably a lot out at you. We've talked about public cloud. We've kind of talked about what Office 365 is a little bit. We've talked about private cloud and kind of how it works. We've gone through the hybrid cloud, and we've talked about how it links together a little bit. We've talked about what it looks like. We've talked about why it makes sense to do in a few scenarios. And hopefully we've kind of hit on a few questions, and you can either ask them now through our chat window or through Twitter, or we can take them offline too. And if it's You know, if it's a complex question, which hybrid can get complex sometimes, we can take those offline and kind of get back to you. So, Peter, let me know, what do we got? Anything going on for a question?
Yeah, I'm just looking. We don't have anything on Twitter. I do have a couple of things being asked. Dom's asking if he can get copies of the slides. Of course you can. And again, this video will be provided to all of your email afterwards, and it'll be available online. So you can look at it again. You can share it with somebody you think it'll help. But yeah, we'll definitely get that stuff to you. John, you mentioned that the audio had dropped out for you a couple times. Hopefully that sorted itself out. But again, we'll get this to you. Other than that, the question I have for you would be, how hard is it to set up the ADFS for Office 365? You
Yeah,
with that?
Yeah. So we get hit with that one a lot, right? Because this stuff seems simple, and you know, how hard is it in reality? And the nice thing is that if you're already using ADFS for anything else, generally the hardest part of ADFS is setting up the source of it, right? So getting your Active Directory to sort of talk out. To get these other environments, private or public cloud, to talk in isn't that hard. So once you've got yours set up and once you've got yours tested, setting these other ones up is not that big of a deal. If you're using it for anything else, you already know that it's working. You already know. So taking on another kind of ADFS partner should be a piece of cake.
All righty. I will take this second just in case anybody has any other questions. Get them in now. Again, John, I think it might be your signal, but if not, you know, we'll definitely reach out to you and get you taken care of. But I do want to address the winner right now of the Windows 8 Pro, and that has just been chosen, and it's John Lord. So, John, we'll be in touch with you. We do have a couple questions coming in. Matt's just asked, who handles patching SharePoint Online in both the public and private cloud options?
So patching it in a public cloud is going to be all of them, and one of the caveats you have there is you're not really you don't really know what's happening a lot of times before it happens. So a lot of times they're going to patch SharePoint without you really even knowing it, which can be an issue. But again, since they're keeping tighter control over the environment and what's installed there, a lot of times they've already kind of done some of their testing, and there can be issues. But again, since it's kind of a tighter controlled system, there generally isn't as many as patching this like on-prem. Now, on a private cloud, it depends, because generally what you'll find, depending on what type of private cloud, if we're talking about us specifically, what we do is we patch critical kind of operating system patches and try to keep that level maintained. And then the SharePoint stuff is done by request. So if there's something specific we need out of Service Pack or cumulative updates, and we can go in and kind of do that as an engagement per customer. We don't have to do it across the board, because we don't want to, again, these are usually more customized environments, and patching that can break things. So we can handle it, and we do handle it, but we don't handle it automatically generally.
Okay, a couple questions have come in. Again, Trevor is asking, what would your tipping point be in terms of size of the organization moving to a hybrid solution? He's asking, is that employees, users, turnover?
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors involved there. Generally, it's going to kind of come from, I guess my first tipping point would be your IT staff and what they're actually kind of in charge of and what they're trying to do. So my thing is, I was an on-prem IT guy for a long time, and what I want to see those IT guys generally do is work on actual business solutions, not try to support systems themselves, right? So things like backups and hardware and maintaining servers and operating systems don't make a lot of sense a lot of times, because we want those IT people to actually be solving business problems, not maintaining hardware and systems. So depending on the size of that environment, what's kind of that slice of your IT environment? Now, the fun part is it kind of hits on both sides of the spectrum. A lot of times we'll see kind of these middle-sized IT departments be sort of the most resistant to this. The smaller ones are already trying to hand off stuff because they don't have enough cycles to go around to do all this. And the bigger ones have done it so long that they know they don't need to be doing this, and they have large development departments, they have large security departments, and they are already working on kind of spinning all of that hardware and getting it out. So it's those middle ones a lot of times that are kind of the more resistant ones to this. As far as other tipping points, it really is going to matter specifically for SharePoint how extensively you're using the product. Are you just going in there and uploading some documents and using some basic workflows, or are you actually in there completely redesigning like how your whole HR system works or how your procurement system works? Are you really in there doing some heavy lifting to try to automate a lot of business processes? That's where you're going to start seeing this swing. One other tipping point is going to be how much kind of third-party stuff are you using inside of that. So if you've got a lot of stuff, if you're on-prem now and you're using a lot of installed applications or third-party applications, how many of those are available in Office 365? Some of them probably are, but are all of them in there? And so is it somewhere where you don't want to lose those, so you want to bring it into someplace that can kind of maintain them a little bit more? So that's kind of three big ones for me, depending on where you're at.
Okay, Dominic is agreeing with us, I guess, saying that both Office 365 and SharePoint are perfect candidates for private cloud since there's a lot of information contained in both. And he asked for your thoughts, which I guess we've kind of talked about in a lot of different ways, even with a lot of our ebooks and past webinars.
Yeah, SharePoint is just so comprehensive. It lends itself really well to this, and you're right. It's really a good candidate for private cloud because it just doesn't operate the way that a lot of other applications do. And if you see other applications that I guess I would compare with SharePoint as far as their flexibility and their customizations and things like that is, I guess Salesforce might be the closest thing I could kind of come up with. But you also look at the amount of work they've done in Salesforce to try to make it a flexible platform, even though it's still a shared application and a multi-tenant app. So that I don't think that work has quite been put into the SharePoint, especially SharePoint Online, to get it quite to that point. I'm not really sure that it ever will because of the level of some of these customizations that we're doing that go all the way down to the authentication level of the product, not just kind of the user interface and the branding. So,
all right, CS is asking, in SharePoint Online, does Microsoft give an option to upgrade to the newer version? So, like, for instance, the next version of SharePoint to the client before they update the site?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. It's only really happened to us one time, and that was I guess there was kind of they were dabbling in this before, but it's really only happened, I guess, on a wide scale one time. And I haven't used the SharePoint product enough to know kind of what that scenario was and how they went through it. So we can kind of take that one offline and get a better answer for that.
Okay. And then, John, you had a few things to say. I'll say right off the bat, your question, he asked about if we have any comments around data and security in regards to all of this, and we actually are going to be covering that in our future webinar, which would take place next month, but we can certainly take some of that offline in the meantime.
Yeah, so what we like to do on that, and if you look up the last Office 365 webinar, again, we know what we do very well, and we know how to kind of integrate it with these other systems, but we're also not working with an Office 365 on a day-to-day basis. So our goal there is to bring in partners that have a lot more experience with that and can kind of go in a lot more depth as far as security or comparing features or what they actually run into as far as hurdles. So the previous webinar was a partner webinar, and the next one's going to be a partner webinar, and so that they can talk a little bit more in depth about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then John is also saying for small and medium enterprises, his current thinking is go 100% cloud. Thinks that small or medium business should spend their money in staff time, or should not spend their money in staff time maintaining servers. But then your concern is hybrid is not great for search as the result blocks are separate from on-prem and cloud results. Are there other examples like this that have suboptimal user experience?
Yeah, and again, that's kind of what the previous webinar is going to talk about. I mean, if you are doing a hybrid and you're talking specifically about a hybrid SharePoint environment, yeah, there's a lot of there's data that's going to be all over the place. Another one that we run into sometimes is if you're using like user profiles pretty heavily, and you're not using a trust, you're running over Active Directory federated services, you can run into some, yes, as you put it, suboptimal results. There's ways around most of those, but you're sort of trading off some of the ease and some of the kind of the pre-baked stuff in there for some customized solutions based upon what you're actually trying to do. So there are ways to sort of federate those search results. There are ways to reach back and get to your on-prem data from a hybrid SharePoint environment. But if, like we said earlier, if you're going 100% cloud, then a lot of times it becomes actually even a little easier to keep all that stuff in one place. So.
All right. Well, thanks again, Chris. I don't see any other questions right now. If I missed any, I do apologize, and be sure to let us know. And anybody else coming up with questions after this, always feel